Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. All right, welcome to this episode of No Instructions. We have Ken Frei, who's
Free. Yeah.
Stop it right now. Have I been saying your name wrong?
I don't know. It's funny because it's Free. I have one of those names though. Like it's
EI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is.
It's been pronounced wrong my whole life. And so I don't correct people usually.
Yeah.
Because I don't care. I don't take personal offense.
This will live on the internet forever.
Yeah. So but it is awkward because some people I'll know for a while, they'll hear it pronounced the right way, and they're like, "Dude, I've been calling you Ken Frei for like 4 years or something." I'm like, "It's not a big deal. I know you
too."
I'm like, "I know you know who I am." Like,
I've known you for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Okay, so head of product at physical product at Pura, right?
Yep.
And you also run your own coaching program as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about maybe. I always say kind of Twitter style, real short, what it is that you're up to right now.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive into your background a little bit.
Great. So like you mentioned, I'm over all the hardware products for Pura. And that's been awesome. We've been growing really quickly and introducing more hardware products all the time. People really know us for the fragrances and scents we have, but it's fun to work on how we actually diffuse those fragrances and make it a magical experience. Also, doing executive coaching and leadership coaching with folks. Love that just because I've always been a huge student of mindset and performance and how we get the best out of ourselves. And then I'm really big into triathlon. So I guess it's been 5 years ago I got into triathlon. My whole life I've been a traditional sport athlete, football, basketball, but I was trying to stay in shape and be competitive as I got older.
Yeah.
And so signed up for a half Ironman and did it. Shortly after I got hit by a truck and life flighted to the hospital and had a brain injury, and that was a whole journey. And thankfully I've been able to recover pretty well from that. And so now I compete in the half Ironman distance primarily. I'm trying to qualify for world championships, and I'm getting close. I was just knocking on the door of the last race I did. And then I'm a dad of 3 girls, so that keeps me busy. And I love the girls.
Of the just for people that aren't quite as familiar with the triathlon, like it's a kind of 3-portion competition.
Yeah.
And what are the numbers in each one of them?
So for the half Ironman distance that I do, it's a 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike ride, and then a 13-mile run. So half marathon.
Not easy.
It's not easy, no. And that's kind of what I love about it, actually. I'll just share this now because I think about it all the time. My favorite quote is from Will Smith, which after he slapped Chris Rock, people kind of like laugh at me that my favorite quote is from Will Smith. But years ago at an award show, he was giving this acceptance speech, and he said, "The keys to life are reading and running." He said running because there's that little voice inside your head that says, "Gosh, I'm tired. I want to quit. My lung's going to pop. My leg hurts." And he said, if you can overcome that voice in your head, you can do anything in life. And then he said, reading because there's no problem that you will face that someone else hasn't already experienced and written about in a book.
Yeah.
And so literally every training session I do, I have a moment where I think about that, where I'm kind of hitting the wall. In fact, it happened to me this morning. Yeah. I just think it's that little voice in my head. I just got to overcome that and push through it. And it's just been really good training and kind of a mantra for life.
In a training session, when does it come? Like early or later?
It kind of depends. I mean, for me this morning, like I got to bed a little later than I wanted to last night. So I fell asleep about midnight. For whatever reason, woke up like a little after 5. And so I'm going on 5 hours of sleep. And I just kind of felt crummy this morning. And I had a 1.5 mile swim. And then I was supposed to do 8 or 9 mile run.
Where'd you swim?
I swam at the Lehigh Legacy Center this morning.
Yeah, cool.
And so then I got home and I had to do this run. And it wasn't just like
So you're not just training like in sections. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go for a long swim this morning, and then I'm also going to go for a run.
Yeah, and the run, it wasn't just running. It was kind of an interval run. So I was supposed to do 15-minute warm up, and then I was doing 8 miles like race pace, and then a 1 minute walk break, 8 miles race pace. And so I had several iterations of that. And right away in the warm up, I could just feel like I didn't get a good sleep. My legs are pretty heavy. I've had a hard training week. And so right away I was like, this sucks. And I just thought, let me just do the first interval. And if I can do that at race pace, I'll just see how I'm feeling. I'll go from there. Yeah. And it's like so many things in life where it's like, once you get going, then you're like, okay, I actually can get through this. And so then I made it. I think I had 6 of those kind of race pace intervals. And by the time I got to number 6, I was like, my heart rate was super high. But anyways, it was just do the next one, just do the next one. And so I got through it, but so it kind of depends on the day, but you always have that moment somewhere in there where you're like, this isn't fun. Like, why am I doing this again? And if you kind of push through it, then at the end, you're like, I'm really glad that I did that. So
the race car driving that I do is endurance racing. And so it's, like traditional road racing, it's like, a race is like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm in a race car for like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And every single time in the first 30, 40, 50 miles of a 400-mile race, I'm like, what am I doing?
Totally.
It just hits you right away,
A lot of times it is early because, I think we have this natural human response where there's like trauma or there's just some like physical stress.
Yeah, for sure.
And your brain freaks out and it's like, I'm dying or I'm, whatever.
Yeah. And I also think that it's like before the flow state as well.
Yeah.
You're not really comfortable. Well, you're never comfortable, but like you're not really in that zone yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I'm sure you feel that as well, racing.
No, totally. Because and to that Will Smith quote, it's like, that voice in your head freaks out and says like, I'm dying or I'm uncomfortable or I'm stressed. And if you kind of tell your brain like, no, we're doing this, it's almost like your brain then is like, oh, okay, I'm not dying. I guess we are doing this. And then it almost like relaxes a little bit and you get into that flow state where, for me, like running or biking or swimming or whatever, once you get into that flow state, it's like, I actually could go forever. I could go for a long time, but it's kind of pushing past that freak out moment. And
have you heard of that marathon run that's like absolutely insane? There's an incredible documentary about it. It's in Tennessee.
Yeah, the Barkley Marathons.
Barkley.
Yeah. Because they do 3. I forget how long it is, but it's
multiple days.
Yeah, multiple days, and they have to do 3 laps.
Correct.
And it's different every year. Yeah, and there's only been, I forget exactly how many, but there's only been like 15 or 20 people who have ever finished.
Exactly.
And the first female just finished.
Really?
I think this last year.
Well, the race has been going on for many years now.
Yeah.
And the first finisher, I think, finished in 15 years ago, 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And like what's insane about that is as soon as a person finished, now people are finishing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But prior to that, no one had finished. Literally, people kept showing up to a race and could not finish it for years.
Well, there's so many examples. I mean, I was listening to a podcast recently. They were talking about the 4-minute mile, and that's the example everyone uses. But it's like nobody could get under 4 minutes. And then Roger Bannister did it, and then all of a sudden, I think within a couple months, somebody else did it. And now people are running, I don't even know what the world record is, but it's probably close to 3:30 or something.
So crazy.
It's insane. And so many things that happens where it's like this impossible thing, and then somebody sets the standard and they're like, you actually can do it.
Right.
And then people start going under. So
all right. Where does your story start? Like, if somebody wants to get to know you, where does your story start?
So for me, I mean, I grew up pretty normal upbringing, I would say. I was born in Utah, moved to Idaho when I was a kid. And then when I was about 4, moved to the Boise area. Okay. And I lived there until I was a freshman in high school. And probably one of the first kind of life-changing moments for me, my parents came to me when I was a freshman and said that we were moving to Idaho Falls across the state. I remember I was devastated.
Idaho Falls is kind of smaller.
It's smaller, yeah. But in Boise, at the time, was a little smaller. But Boise's the capital in a bigger area. And I just had a lot of friends there. I was doing well in sports, and just had a lot. Like in high school, you just feel like you have everything figured out. Your group of friends, and so it was just a tough time to move. And for me, that just kind of rocked my world. And so I moved to Idaho Falls and just felt miserable about it for probably a year. It was funny because I actually was in high school in Nampa or Boise area.
Right.
And when I moved to Idaho Falls, 9th grade was actually back in junior high. And so it was like the worst because I was like, I was going from high school, like back to junior high for a few months and then like back up to high school. And it was interesting because it was just, I guess it forced me to deal with some adversity early on. I had to, lean on family. I was like praying a lot, that I would feel some peace about it. And thankfully I, after about a year, made some really good friends. It ended up just being kind of a lifesaver for me that gave me the support I needed as a kid and helped me kind of get through that. And then, so I guess the thing that taught me was just that I could be resilient, like through like difficult things.
That's hard for a younger kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because as an adult 14. Now, it feels like it's not that big a deal. I was 15, but like, and a lot of people move. And so like, if you grew up in a military family, you're probably laughing and being like, what a wimp.
I've interviewed multiple military families, in fact, Corinne Clark, lived alone in Germany as a teenager for a while.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy, right?
Well, it is. And so when you're in that situation, you kind of get used to like being adaptive to situations. But when it's your first time, it is just kind of like a shock to the system where you just think, holy cow. And so anyways, I kind of settled in there, and made really good friends. And then I think the next kind of maybe to like the next iteration or of that journey of like becoming adaptive was, then I got called on a mission for my church. And
where'd you go?
I went to Ghana in West Africa. And it was funny because
a little different than Idaho Falls.
Oh my gosh. Well, everybody wants to go to like a foreign speaking mission because it sounds like an adventure, and then when you get there, like for me at least, I was like, they tricked me. Like this, this is hard.
You wanted the opposite.
Well, because I was thinking about all the stateside like missionaries that were probably living in nice apartments and driving cars. But for the experience actually there that really changed me was like, my dad had told me before I was going to go, he's like, when you fly, because I was going to the MTC in Ghana. So I was going to go to Provo. So I was flying straight there. And he's like, hey, there'll probably be other missionaries when you get on the plane and you'll be friends for life. Like you'll connect and, you guys will be in the same group. And so I left from Idaho Falls and I flew to Salt Lake. And when I got to Salt Lake, there was nobody there. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like, I wonder maybe somewhere along the way, like I'll meet some other ones. And so I called my parents at Salt Lake and they're like, how are you? Did you meet anybody else? Yeah. I was like, not yet, but I'm excited still.
Yeah.
And so then I flew from Salt Lake to Chicago. And when I got to Chicago, this is actually one of the first times I'd ever traveled internationally. And so I didn't know that there was an international terminal. And so I almost missed my flight because I'm like looking for my gate. And then
you're for reference for people, you're like probably barely 19 at this point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're a young kid.
And so I finally asked for help and they're like, oh, you've got to go to the international terminal and you have to take like a train to get there. And so I nearly missed my flight, but I called my parents and they're like, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm still doing okay, but I don't see any other missionaries here. And they're like, well, hang in there. Like you'll be okay. And so then I flew from Chicago to London and I got to London again, all by myself. And by this point, I'm actually starting to feel like a little lonely and kind of scared.
Yeah.
And again, nobody there. I'm still alone. Man, it was harder to call home at that point because it was international. Somehow I figured out how to do it. And I called my parents and they're worried about me. Who have you met? And I'm like, there's nobody still. And they're like, well, don't worry. Somebody will be there like when you land, and you'll connect with them. So then I fly from London to Ghana, and I got to Ghana, and it was the middle of the night. Well, not middle of the night. It was probably 10 p.m., 11 p.m. I landed. And it had been raining, and it immediately just felt insanely hot and humid. And I walk in the airport, and the roof was leaking, and I just thought, holy cow. And I'm like, with my luck, they probably forgot my bags somewhere. They didn't, thankfully. Yeah. But I pick up my bags, and I walk out, and there was like this kind kind of barrier where all these people were waiting to pick people up, but it felt insanely claustrophobic and crowded, just this huge throng of people.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there waiting for someone to pick me up, and like nobody is there. Oh, no. And I waited, I don't know, probably 45 minutes and nobody's there. And now I'm like feeling very alone and just like,
I was scared.
Yeah, just scared. 'Cause I'm like, I have no idea what to do here. And I asked, the church gave me like this emergency number to call. So I asked this airport worker if I could borrow his phone. And I called this number. And by this point, I'd probably been waiting a little over an hour. And I called, and this African voice like answered. And I said, hey, this is Elder Frei. And I'm here. And he just said, oh, sorry. And hung up. And I was like, okay, like I guess someone's coming now. I don't know. And then the guy who let me use his phone asked for some money, like for using his phone.
Of course.
And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I have some cash. I give this guy $20, which was like a lot of money. And I wait there for probably another hour. Nobody comes. And so I'm like, anyways. And so then I had this other number. I asked this guy again, can I use your phone again? Called the other number, got a hold of like the MTC president, and he said, oh, we're so sorry. We thought you were coming tomorrow. And so they had forgotten me.
You were about to spend the night at
totally.
the airport.
And so by now I'd been like landed. I'm exhausted after like 20 hours of travel.
Scared to death.
Scared to death. I don't speak. Yeah. I'm there for a couple hours. And so then I hang up the phone. Now they're actually coming to get me. The guy asked me for money again for using his phone the second time. So I gave him another $20. Oh. So and so finally they came and got me, but it was kind of just a rude awakening that like, this is going to be, difficult. And I ended up being the only like American guy in my whole group there. For most of my mission, I was actually the only American that I was with. And so again, it was just another kind of life lesson of just being adaptable and learning to thrive in like situations that weren't ideal.
Yeah.
And so kind of between that and moving, then I felt like, I could do a lot of things. I think.
Why did your parents move? Choose to move?
Yeah. So my dad, he was just having a hard time with his job, and it was kind of having like some conflicts with his boss, and just, he actually kind of fallen in like a little bit of a depressive funk. Sure. And
do you remember that, or did he tell you later?
I think I was a little oblivious to it at the time. I mean, he told me some of it then, and I got more details later as an adult, and it made a lot more sense looking back on it. But at the time, I mean, it was hard to understand, because I was like, well, because you're not feeling good, like it's putting me in a bad situation. I was like very self-focused in that moment. But he had grown up in Idaho Falls, and one of his best friends, had offered him a job there. And so he kind of felt like this might be a better situation for me. Yeah. And so he moved. And then it was actually really tough, because then when we got to Idaho Falls, some stuff ended up not working out with the job. And so then my dad was unemployed for a little while. Yep. And so things got really financially tight for us. And so it just was kind of one of those things where it was like, I was bummed about leaving all my friends behind, was bummed because my dad wasn't happy, was bummed, that my parents were stressed and we didn't have any money.
So it's
just a lot going on.
When you look at that, like that time in your life, do you associate Idaho Falls with like good memories or bad memories mostly? Good now.
I mean, that first like 12 months, it was terrible. But again, thankfully I ended up making some really good friends that ended up being, friends that I'm still close with to this day. Awesome. And, yeah, it was just kind of, I guess, grinding through those 12 months of pain and kind of loneliness.
So you're in Ghana for 2 years.
Yeah.
What do you learn about yourself while you're there?
So Ghana and Africa in general is an assault on all your senses. You get there, the weather is insanely hot. The smells are like just strong, good and bad. It's like sometimes you're
not so good.
Yeah, you'll walk by like an open sewer and you're like about fall over. The poverty can be kind of overwhelming. Just everything. It just feels very overwhelming. And having not traveled like outside the country really until then, you think that you have all the answers as an American of like how to live life. And one of the best pieces of advice my dad gave me actually before going over there is he said, don't go try to make Americans out of them. You become a Ghanaian. And I actually really remember that. And it's been something I've thought about at different points in my life with things where I think some missionaries that went over there had a hard time because they thought, well, this isn't how you do it in America. Right. And you can feel really frustrated if that's the mindset you have, because things there are just different in every way. I mean, and it's very chaotic. And the little things like, I mean, there's the traffic laws and the way, I mean, you're driving down the street and there's like hundreds of women like carrying things on their head and selling things like in the middle of the street. And so like when you first get there, it's just a huge adjustment. And I wish that I had at that time, like some other, American companions that like you can kind of connect with and almost vent to, or like, dude, this is crazy, right? Like, but like for literally my whole mission until the very last companion I had, I was with African missionaries, and a lot of times like out, a lot of times out in the villages, and so it was like there was no outlet to like vent about it. Yeah. You couldn't be like, hey, dude, like your country is kind of crazy, like, and so like I actually very quickly had to adapt and like become a Ghanaian, and it was a huge blessing in disguise because it forced me to like adapt more quickly. And I just grew to love so many things about, the people and the culture. And the thing I love about Ghana is I mean, a lot of people say this about people who live in third world countries, but it's like the people are very happy despite their circumstances. And I loved how resourceful they are. I mean, I've seen so many crazy things. Like you'd see a truck that had like rolled over on the street, and people will come out of nowhere, seemingly like out of the bush, and like they'll all work together and like flip the truck back right side up, and the guy gets back in and just keeps going, and you're like, that's amazing. I mean, it's like the community they have and how resourceful they are to just make stuff work is pretty inspiring. And so I think I just learned how to be resourceful, how to learn that I could thrive in like a difficult environment. You see those commercials where they say, for $1 a day, you could feed, a child in Africa. And I know that that's true because I lived on $3 a day was my budget, Oh, really? And so like, I kind of learned like I can live with not very much and be very happy and be resourceful and work with people who are not like me or have my background. And there's been several times in my career since then that I've kind of been thrust into situations like that has come back to just be really useful.
So what year do you come home?
So I came back in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you get home, what do you do? You're back in America.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's the next step for you?
So I went to BYU, and that was...
Were you a student prior to your mission?
So I'd gone...
freshman?
Yeah. So I did one semester at BYU, Idaho before I left. And my college was not planned. I may have told you this before, but like when I was getting ready to go to, when I was a senior in high school, my friends started asking like, where are you going to school? And I was like, I don't know. Like
they had it figured out.
Well, and they said like, well, where have you applied? And I was like, applied? Like, yeah. I didn't even really know you had to like apply. I just hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, where did you apply? And a lot of them were like, oh, BYU, Idaho. And so I was like, oh, me too. Like
Idaho Falls is what, like 30, 40 minutes away,
I mean, it's like 30 minutes from Rexburg. Yeah. So I went up there and I hated it. I mean, some people like Rexburg.
Why'd you not like it?
Too small a town. There's nothing to do there.
Very tiny town.
The rules are too restrictive. I'm more of, I just hate like rules that feel constricting. Like,
yeah, it's a church school. So there are some like kind of religious bound rules, but there's also kind of just some weird old school rules as a private campus.
Totally.
It's kind of wild.
It is wild. And so I did not like it. And so I called one of my best friend was going to BYU in Provo. And I had a lot of other friends from growing up that were down here. And so I was like, I bet I would like, Provo a lot more. And so I called down here and asked them when the deadline was to apply. And they're like, oh, it was 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
And I was like, dang it. I said, is there a wait list? And they're like, there is, but your odds of getting in are like almost zero. I was like, well, let me at least get on the wait list and apply. And then I just started calling them every day. And I was like, what's the status of my application? And after maybe
Ken called again.
After maybe 6 weeks, they said, you've been accepted. And I was like, I really think I did wear them down because, I mean, my grades were fine, but it was nothing special. I mean, I think I had like a 3.5 GPA.
Yeah.
My ACT was very average. I mean, it was like, I think a 24 or something.
Yeah.
I was average in every way. And
do you feel like school was difficult to you, or did it come really natural to you?
No, well, so when I went to BYU, then I was to answer your question, like, I declared as a biology major because everyone in Idaho who's rich is a doctor or an accountant or, you know, like a professional service like that. And so I was like, oh, well, I should be a doctor because that's how I'll get rich. And I started taking these classes, and I was like, I don't care at all why the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You know, it was just like, so it wasn't difficult for me. I just think it wasn't the right, it wasn't something that really captured my attention and my energy. And so I actually, like, I didn't go to class. I had a great time in Provo right before my mission. I rarely went to class. I think I got an F, 2 C's, a D, and a B, which I was thrilled about the B at the time. And again, it wasn't because I wasn't smart. I was just very focused on enjoying life as a freshman. As I was leaving my mission, I got a letter letting me know that I was on academic probation. And so I came home to that with a little better study habits when I came home. And so I came back and I thought, okay, I'm going to take school more seriously, but I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And so I started taking classes just across lots of different fields. And one that really caught my attention early was like econ. And I was like, I just like how they think about the world at kind of a macro level. I was like, I like that. And so I was like, I'll be an econ major. And so I declared as that and continued with it until I got to econometrics and it started getting very math heavy. Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, gosh, I don't like this. Like this feels more just like tedious schoolwork again. Yeah. And I don't remember how I ended up there, but somehow I ended up in the entrepreneurship lecture series. And I don't remember who the speaker was, but like they had several different ones come in. And I heard these people kind of talk about building businesses and creating things. And I just thought, this sounds like me. Because growing up, I had kind of been an entrepreneur. I started lots of different businesses. I started a lawn mowing business that I ran for years. And I was like, I like that. And so,
were you exposed to that in your younger years, really? Or was it just kind of something that you just did because you needed money or something? Or did you see something and you were like, I want to go try that?
Well, my dad was a good influence there. Again, I did Boy Scouts growing up, and I remember he was like, they just came out with an entrepreneurship merit badge. And he's like, I think entrepreneurship is the future, you know? And I was like, okay, I can't even hardly say entrepreneurship. But he was just telling me like, that's when you create your own business. And that kind of enables you to do anything, you know? And so he really pushed me to do that. And him and my mom, they always encouraged us that like, you want to try to earn money and you want to save like for college and for whatever else you need. And so my dad also had said like, I don't want you to have to work during school because I want you to be able to focus on school, but I want you to learn how to work and I want you to earn money. And so he and my mom when I was 11, I think, started driving me around to mow lawns for people, awesome. Which is a huge sacrifice because I'm like, to take their Saturdays to just drive me around mowing lawns. I mean, as a parent, that would suck. And so like, I learned how to like, give people quotes for business and how to do good service and just, how to like be a good business operator.
And it worked.
It did. And so I ran that business with my brothers really till I graduated, then my brothers ran it after me. And so, yeah, like coming back and getting in this entrepreneurship lecture series, I just thought this connects with me. And so I applied to the business school and got in, and I did an entrepreneurship emphasis in the business school, which looking back, I probably would have done something different. Cause as you know, it's like, you learn how to be an entrepreneur by being an entrepreneur. It's like, you're not going to study it in school.
I don't know if I told you this. I think I've said this once or twice on the podcast before in other episodes, but I got invited to speak at the MBA program with entrepreneurship emphasis. And It was actually a contact through Convoy who reached out to me,
cool.
who is one of the professors there or something, administrator. And he was ready. He was doing an internship at Convoy.
Yeah.
At Convoy Ventures. And so he reaches out to me. He's like, hey, would you be willing to come share your story and speak? And I'm like, yeah. And so I go, and the first slide after the welcome slide says, if you're serious about entrepreneurship, quit school now.
Totally.
And it was pretty well received. It was really interesting.
No, there's a lot of truth in that. It's funny because people have asked me if that's useful to get that degree. And I'm like, for me, it was and it wasn't. It was like everything I learned about starting a business, I learned from starting a business later. But the thing that was very helpful about just going through that was like the network that I built, the examples that I saw and other people who would come speak. And so it sort of gave me a foundation to start from. And so then as I was getting closer to like graduating, they had just started doing the business model competition there. Like they had done the business plan competition, I think for a couple of years. Yeah. And they had done 1 year of the business model competition. I remember I went and I saw that and I was like, that would be so cool to like be up on stage and be pitching this business and like actually feel like I had something that I did. And so the next year, I had started this business called Zoom Park, and it was a very college business where I was like, parking on campus sucks. Like
small market.
Yeah. How do I solve that? And so I kind of got into that more and realized that like solving parking for like a university is not like that big of an opportunity. But where it felt like there was a bigger opportunity was partnering with events. So when people bought an event ticket, like to go to a game or a concert or something, they could also like add on parking because that was a big pain for people. And so anyways, that was kind of what the business became that I went through the business model competition.
Did you like while you're in this program and kind of seeing what could be, and you're meeting people and networking and stuff and like creating these little businesses, did it was it clear for you that you were going to leave school and start something, or was it like maybe I'll start something eventually, but I'm going to go find a job? Like what was the next step for you?
Maybe this is a pattern for me. Well, it for sure is a pattern. Like applying for college, I'm not a great planner. So honestly, I didn't know. Like I didn't like oh, I'm gonna go get a job somewhere. I just thought I'm gonna be opportunistic, and whatever kind of presents itself, like I'll jump on it. And so this idea, a friend kind of was the one who even like kind of germinated the idea for me, and then I started working on it and kind of ran with it, and I got connected with these two investors from back east that had one of the largest airport parking reservation companies in the United States, and both multimillionaire guys. So me as a college student, I was like, holy cow. And they invested in the business. Wow. And so I was like, I'm onto something here, And so I took that through the business model competition. And at first it was just at BYU. And I remember I took third there, and I'm very competitive, and so I was annoyed because I remember I was like, the teams that won, I was like, I have a better business than those guys, like, and so I was the last person to qualify for the international business model competition. So I was like, when I go to that, I'm just gonna crush these guys, and it was very much about. I kind of learned this by observing like how the BYU competition went, but it's very much about pitching and telling your story. And so I was like, I'm just going to nail this pitch. And so I practiced every day, just for hours, just like doing this pitch. And so the international competition came, and there's businesses from Harvard and Stanford and all these other schools that came in, and we got up, and Steve Blank was like the big guy that came there, was one of the judges. And, there's a few other famous startup judges or whatever. And anyways, we went and I pitched, and as soon as I was done, I just knew. I was like, I killed it. Like I just crushed it. And you could even hear the crowd, like everybody, yeah, like after I was done. And I knew. I was like, I think I just won this. And I did. I won the international competition. Wow. And I got one of those big checks. I think I got like $14,000, which felt so much money. I mean, because I had about $14,000 of student loans, which I used that to like pay it off. So then I was like actually feeling at peace, because I was like, I don't have any debt. I have this business where I have some investors. I can like jump into it. Anyway, so it was a huge moment for me to just like have that success and feel like I could do this. Like, anyways, it was pretty
really cool though.
Yeah.
That you won.
Yeah,
so, like,
it was cool.
What ended up happening with the little business?
It failed dramatically. It's funny because
the judges were terrible.
Well, it's funny because looking back on it, and I give this advice to a lot of people who are starting businesses now, but like those competitions are very much about pitching. Yeah. And I was great at it. But like in terms of like building a sustainable business, I mean, you could argue like how effective they were. Really the mistake that I made with that, and this was a great lesson to learn, these guys that I had invested in me, I had no idea what I was doing. This is my first business. And they came in and they're like, they had already had this successful business and they were, multimillionaires. And they're like, hey, we are in the parking world and we can take you everywhere. Like we can get you all across the country. We'll have all these deals that we'll get you in, all these partnerships that we can help you form. And so for me, I'm like, this is sweet. This is going to be easy. Like I'll partner with these guys. It's just a matter of time till I'm a multimillionaire. Yeah. And I gave up way too much equity to these guys because I just thought, why not? Like I'm going to trust them. And
you
so like,
know any better? How old are you?
Well, so now I'm 21, 22,
yeah,
whatever, 23 years old. I think I was 23 probably. And so between the two of them, they had a controlling stake in the business. And so, I'm here and I'm like just grinding away. Cause at the time I didn't know anything about starting a business other than just to grind. And so I was like, I'm just making cold calls to parking lots all day long, like trying to get partnerships. I went to Real Salt Lake when they opened that stadium. I had my wife out there who, we just got married. It's raining. We're handing out like flyers to people to like park at this lot that we have. And my wife is kind of more introverted. And so she's like hating every minute of this.
You were making her come do it.
Yeah. Cause there was nobody else, I'm like, hey babe, I need you to like help me with this. This is the business I'm starting. And these guys back east, like they just were, I came to realize like, we're very much more interested in being kind of passive partners in terms of doing the work, but they loved getting on a management call with me every week and kind of like getting after me for like,
they owned the majority.
They did. And they would kind of get after me for like all the things I wasn't doing. They're like, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And at first I was like, maybe they're right. Like maybe I'm not like doing all these things. And then after a while I was like, what are you guys doing? Like you said that you were going to like give me all these partnerships. Like, why have none of those come to fruition? And at that point I'd gotten us deals with parking lots in, I think we were in 20 or so cities, and we had like 80 or so lots at some really big venues.
You had revenue.
We did have some revenue. But the margins weren't great. I mean, the whole business, like the fundamentals of the business we were still kind of figuring it out. But we still had some revenue. We had some cool partnerships. And so, it eventually just got to a point where like, I kind of got tired of just like being yelled at these guys all the time. And I was like, I'm working my tail off, earning no money. Like I was, and so I finally went to them and I was like, we had a deal, Standard Parking, which was the second largest parking provider in the country, came and they're like, we're interested in partnering with you. And these guys, I was like, this is a huge opportunity. I took it to my partners and they were like kind of haggling over like some of the minutia of the deal. And it actually was going to cause the deal to fall apart. And I remember at that point, I was like, okay, if we don't do this deal, cause you guys kind of messed this up, like I can't do this anymore. Like I feel like I'm like working so hard on it. I'm not taking any money and like, this is our only chance of success. And so anyways, they wouldn't budge. And so I kind of called their bluff. I think they probably wanted to see if I would.
And the deal didn't go through.
So the deal didn't go through. Wow. It fell apart. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to leave. And they were like, oh, fine, we don't need you. And so I left. And, within like 2 weeks, they called me and they're like, they didn't know anything about the business. They were trying to have one of their sons run it. And so he was asking me like what to do and how to, anyways, it was kind of a mess. So
you're like, good luck.
Yeah. So it was a great, I mean, so for me personally, I mean, there was no financial success in it, but it was a super valuable learning experience.
Yeah.
And it showed, I think, a lot of people in the community just that I was like, they had kind of seen me win that competition at BYU. A lot of people saw how hard I'd kind of hustled, just trying to make it work. And I think it just sort of helped establish my reputation in the community of like, oh, Ken's like someone who helps make things happen.
It's a fantastic, fantastic way to like, it's a sandbox you have, right? Like to go play and learn and do all that. And, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. I think, maybe you could help catch up the timeline, but at some point you go and become a product, leader, product manager at some point. Like, how do you make a transition at some point to product?
Well, so I'll give a fast version. So after Zoom Park, I was like, what am I going to do next? I ended up partnering with a couple guys, and we started an HR software company. And we were doing, we were trying to do like video interviews and kind of candidate screening and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And Paul Ahlstrom was an investor, and he reached out to me.
Right. Yeah.
And because he was big into like the nail it and scale it model. He'd written that book, and so he'd seen me at the BYU business model competition. And so we were doing this new business, and he reached out and he's like, I loved what you did with that. Whatever you're doing next, like I'll fund it. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, so I kind of told him what we were doing. We worked with him. They ended up investing in our business. And Paul, a lot of people know this, has a lot of ties to Latin America. And so really long story short, we started this business here. We ended up deciding to focus this HR business in Mexico. And so I moved my family. We just had a baby to Monterrey, Mexico.
Wait, hold on. Okay. So before you get to Monterey, I actually do remember this.
Yeah.
Did your wife think you were crazy though? You were like making her sell for you in some way or doing some marketing, and she's like not at all into that. And then this business like didn't really have a great outcome financially. Yeah. You know? And then you're kind of like, all right, well, we'll figure it out. Like, what does she think about this whole thing?
Dude, she's amazing. I think any entrepreneur, you have to have a good supportive spouse. If you don't, it just compounds how hard it is, because it's hard anyway. But there's a lot of just emotional stress and then also financial stress. So I've been really fortunate to have, a wife who has been incredibly supportive of everything I wanted to do and up for adventure too, because when we went to Mexico, we had just had our first baby. I think she was about 6 months old at the time. And it was the week before Super Bowl Sunday, I remember. We flew to Monterey. When we got on the plane, we didn't know where we were going to live when we landed. And so it was like we got on the plane, this little baby, we're like going to Monterey, Mexico. And when we got there, I had planned, like we had this real estate agent that was going to help us find a spot, and she'd found this place for us that we hadn't seen yet. And we got there and it was her birthday, the real estate agent. And I was trying to pay her for it, but for whatever reason, my debit card wasn't working down there because it was some international thing. And so I had to ask the real estate agent on her birthday if I could borrow some money from her to put the down payment on this house. Oh. And I'm like, I promise I'll pay you back. So anyway, she gives me the money and we get this house.
Wow, 400. She gives you the money and you're in it.
So we got in this house. So we're down there, and that business, we actually did fine. We grew really quickly, and for the first, I don't know, maybe 6 to 12 months, and then kind of totally plateaued. And then we were stuck, and we were trying to figure out how to get to the next level. The business, in terms of just providing for our family, we were making fine money, but
paying bills,
but it just wasn't really taking off to the next level like we wanted. And so then we were having a hard time kind of raising additional money to keep it going. And again, this is condensing a lot of the story, but we'd been down there for a couple of years, and I was trying to raise more money again. And at that point,
what was your role at this company?
So I was the CEO and the founder. And at that point, I remember thinking just stepping back a little bit and just evaluating me and what's going on here actually? Cause our initial plan, we started that was not to live in Mexico. It kind of happened, all these circumstances. And I just remember thinking is this my plan? Are we going to live in Mexico for the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something? And through a lot of conversations with my wife and with partners and investors and everybody, ultimately decided like, okay, it's this business. I don't know if it's going to be like the venture outcome that we want. We potentially could kind of turn it into like a cash flow business and kind of bootstrap it. And so we made the decision, like we wanted to get back to Utah. And so we decided we're going to move. And so I found one of our guys that was working with us down there as the COO, made a plan with our investors for him to transition and become the CEO, and worked with him over the next several months. And then eventually we moved back here. And so when I came back, I wasn't sure what to do actually, because I thought, okay, I've had these 2 experiences with entrepreneurship now. I haven't like had some crazy exit. I mean, we've survived and like.
But you raised VC.
Yeah, but I raised VC and we had survived and paid bills, which for some people is success, right?
As an entrepreneur, for sure. There was some money.
That's right. And so I came back and I was like, gosh, being an entrepreneur was very much a part of my identity. But I was like, I know how hard it is now. I've kind of done this. And I don't want to just start a business just for the sake of starting a business. And I was like, if I'm honest with myself, I'm not really passionate about parking or passionate about HR software. And so I'm like, I want to do something that I care about, but I don't know what that is right now. And I also was having a hard time just trying to look for a job because I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I can't get a job.
It's a weird identity.
And so I actually had probably 6 months where I was kind of just trying to figure it out, I guess. And at that point, my wife was kind of like, hey, like, you
should do something.
Yeah. Are you going to do something? And I went to lunch with Nate Walkingshaw, who a lot of people know. And he had just, and so he had just, at that time, taken the chief product officer role at Pluralsight. And I was kind of just catching up with Nate. I had first met him when I was doing that first company. And I had talked to him about investing, and he had showed some interest. He didn't end up investing, but we had kind of stayed in touch over the years and had, once a year we'd go to lunch and just kind of catch up. And so I went to lunch with him and was kind of just updating him on my life. And he was like, hey, you should maybe think about coming to Pluralsight, and I'm building out this product team.
And what year was this roughly?
So this was, I think, 2015.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And so I was kind of feeling 2 emotions. I was like, I had a lot of respect for Nate, and I knew what a talented guy he was. I thought that would be awesome to work with him, and Pluralsight was really starting to take off. But I had this identity crisis of like, I'm an entrepreneur, and ultimately I just decided, I think part of it was like I needed a little bit of a mental break to reset and give myself a chance to think about like, what do I really want to do?
Yeah, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And I just thought, I've been like grinding and kind of just scrapping this out as an entrepreneur. It might be really cool to go and work with somebody like Nate and like learn some process and like learn some structure to like, how to build a company.
Pluralsight was a startup, but the Pluralsight has since gone public and I think now private. And at that time, I think they had just done a very large raise and were scaling.
Well, it was funny because it felt huge. The company felt huge to me coming from like my startup. But I think when I joined, there was maybe like 300 employees or so.
Still very much growth startup.
Oh, totally. So and I was one of the earlier product people. I think I was, I don't know, the 6th or something PM that we had there. And it turned out to honestly be one of the best times of my career because the team that Nate and Gil, Lee built there was phenomenal. I mean, it really was like the best of the best product people in Utah. And I felt so fortunate to kind of be there from like a little bit of an untraditional background. Like a lot of people that came in had been like, PMs in their career for a long time. And I was coming at it more as an entrepreneur. But some of the people we've had there have gone on now, to just do incredible things. And so it was just like such a great learning environment. And I was there from that time, and we ended up, I think when I left, we had over 2,000 employees. So we grew a ton. We went through the IPO, which was like an amazing thing to kind of be a part of and see how that worked and how a company would grow. And it just turned out to be a phenomenal thing. And it actually taught me so many of the things that I think would have helped me as an entrepreneur earlier.
Right.
Where I'm like, gosh, I was good at, I guess, talking to customers and kind of understanding their needs and being scrappy to solve them. But like, it gave me a lot of, I don't know, just like more formal training, like a finishing school almost, of like how to build great products and how to think about actually building a team, because I saw the level of talent that was at Pluralsight. And I was like, okay, I actually understand now the type of talent and the type of products that it takes to be successful at this level.
Like shows you like, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is what it looks like. And if I ever want to build something like this, or again, be a part of building something like this is what success looks like.
Yeah.
So so you work with Nate, you work with other team members, and at that point, what brought you to Pura today?
So yeah, Pura, there's actually a lot of folks that I worked with at Pluralsight that are now at Pura.
Great.
And that was kind of really it. Like I've done, again, some of my own things again since Pluralsight. Like Tremont and I started Convoy, like the trips, the adventure trips.
Convoy events business.
And ran that for a few years, which was awesome. I spent some time actually after Pluralsight. I was the head of product at a Y Combinator startup called Prenda. I was there for a few years actually.
Yeah,
with Caitlin, yeah. And that was a great experience. And then again, when I eventually joined Pura, I was kind of trying to decide, do I want to start my own thing again or join something? And really, I've gone through this like self-reflection process many times now where I'm like, am I an entrepreneur? Am I a product leader? Like what? And I've
kind of... How do you answer that question now?
Yes, is how I answer it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because what I've learned is like, it's funny. I think we all struggle and grapple with like our egos a little bit.
Yeah.
And there definitely is a big part of me where I'm like, I'm a CEO, I'm a founder. But a big part of that honestly is because my ego, because I want people to think that I'm cool. I want people to think that I'm important. And I kind of learned that like, what's more important for me actually when it comes to my professional life is like, I want to be working on something meaningful and impactful. And I want to be doing it with people that like I care about and that I really love working with, because we spend so much time and energy at work, whether it's your own company or whether it's, working for somebody else. And so if you don't like it, it sucks, And so with Pura, some really good friends that I'd worked with at Pluralsight were there, and Pura has been growing, like crazy. And so it was a great opportunity. And I just thought, for me at this time of my life, like I think, again, it's kind of right place, right time, hopefully, to work with these people in a role that's impactful and like enjoy work.
Yeah.
And so that kind of provided that for me more than any other opportunity at that time. And so I ultimately decided to do it, and it's been great. I mean, we've been having a lot of success at Pura, and the team and the culture and the people have been just what I needed.
I mean, yeah, Pura has grown massively as well. Company worth well over $1 billion, today. And certainly you're learning new skills, additional skills, new strategies and things right there where prior at Pluralsight, you were working on, a software product, and this is hardware and software, right?
Yeah.
At Pura. And so do you think that there is another business for you at some point in the future? Maybe not near future or further away, but do you think that there could be something? I know you still get to scratch the entrepreneur itch with clients, as in the coaching business as well, right? And there's always little things you could do, but do you think that you might do it again, or I don't know.
I do. I think I mean this is like anyone who kind of has tasted entrepreneurship a little bit. Like it's hard to get that out of your system. I think anyone who is willing to take the plunge and be an entrepreneur or move their family to Mexico or all these things that I've done. It's like, it's hard to not want to control your own destiny, to some extent. I think for me, again, just the life experience I've had and the work experience, like I've gotten a lot more clear and focused on like the type of business, that I would want to start if I did again. For me, I think it's much more about, again, like working with the right team and the people that I really care about. Yeah. I like the kind of topics that really excite me. Like I love health and like fitness. And so like there's I mean, that's pretty broad because there's a lot of businesses you could start within that.
Right.
But it's like, I just think that's so important for people to have the quality of life that they want, and to like not only increase their longevity, but also their health span. You know, a lot of businesses we try to hype ourselves up and say like, I'm changing the world, you know, I'm, and it's like, you know, maybe like if you're selling, you know, whatever, like
and some you're just
sales software or HR software, whatever, it's like that, it does impact something, but it's like, for me, it's hard to get super stoked about, you know, like that. But it's like, you know, you could even say like, well, Pura, it's just scents. The thing I actually love about that is like, when you think about fragrance, it's one of the 5 senses that like really connects with people like on a very deep emotional level. And when you talk to our customers, they just describe like how it transforms their homes and their environments.
This is part of your job, is talking to customers.
Yeah,
right?
all the time.
Yeah,
and
customers.
and they talk about like, gosh, like it transforms like the home and the environment we live in. And so like when you see like that kind of impact that it has on people, like it's easy to get just stoked about it.
Yeah.
And so for me, like with the triathlons that I do and how important health has been for me, like I kind of just love anything that like impacts people on a very fundamental human level. And so like I can see, and that's why I love the coaching business, is like, again, it gets back to like our mentality and our mindset and how we show up as humans. So anything that like has to do with that, just I get excited about, and so I can definitely see like some kind of business in the future, like in that realm. Yeah,
it'd be interesting. I do think you're an entrepreneur, and it's funny you talk about like this, having tasted it. It's kind of like, is you know what that's like, and you also tasted how crappy it is, right? Like, it's really hard. You know,
it is. Yeah,
it's very hard. Very stressful. I had after you know, we sold Jump. I had a friend of mine that really wanted me to come and run the technical team on his, you know, in his company. Company's very large, all over the country, profitable, growing, and a very great comp package, you know. And it wasn't something I could get excited about, though. Yeah. And so I said no, but it would have been kind of nice to just have, you know, compared to what I was doing before, maybe a little break, right? But it didn't quite feel like the right thing. And anyway, he kept trying. I ended up doing some consulting for them to help them out. And I was on their advisory board. But he wanted me to come join, you know, full time. And he goes, after I told him no, eventually we'd talked for a while. And he's like, I knew you were going to say no. And he goes, I was like, why? And he goes, because you've tasted what it's like, you know? Well, I was going to ask, like, what is it about you think that you're like, I couldn't do that? Because you sold the company. It's like you've had some financial success. So I assume it's not like, gosh, I've got to have this exit to. So what is it for you that's like, I've got to still be an entrepreneur? It's weird. I remember. So I grew up, you know, with my dad, who was a small business owner. My mom kind of pushed him to be a small business owner. I don't think that he had, for lack of a better word, the balls to do it himself, right? Yeah. But she really encouraged him to do it. She was even more entrepreneur, like she was like a florist, you know. Mm-hmm. So he starts this business. She actually passes away, and he's got this brand new, like literally a few months before. Yeah. He's got this brand new business, and he's kind of just forced to figure it out. He just quit his job, spent a little bit of money they had on equipment and stuff. So he was a caterer, and I grew up, you know, doing that with him. And I remember as a teenager, one time he told me, after now he had been doing it at that point, I don't know, 15 years or so. I was maybe 15 or 16. Yeah. And he said, I would work for, he said some number and it was really low. He said, I would work for pennies basically to work for myself. Yeah. You know, and what he was saying is it's about the creativity and the freedom to be able to do the things that you need to do. Yeah. And I think part of the challenge, another mentor of mine who is a very, very low-key, not a lot of people know him, but low-key real estate investor, and has done extremely well in his career. And one time I called him and was like, how are you doing? And he goes, oh, I'm doing fantastic. I just met a really great person. And I'm like, oh, who? You know, tell me more about that. And he goes, well, I went to go pick up my juice this morning in the drive-thru, and I ordered, and I said, how are you doing today, to the person through the drive-through speaker. And she responds and says, oh, I'm just doing okay. So he gets to the window and he asks her, well, why are you just doing okay? And she says, oh, I'm having this thing happen, and it's actually been pretty rough. And so he says he parked his car and he went in to chat with her for 10, 15 minutes and talked to her about it. Didn't know this person at all.
Yeah.
And he said, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'd like to believe it. She felt a little better after that, getting to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And he literally said to me in the same conversation, if I had a job, I wouldn't have been able to take the time to do that.
Yeah.
And so there's some sort of trade-offs, right, for the freedom of time that we have. And there's certainly companies that do allow, employees the freedom to kind of do some of the things they need to do, for sure. But I think for me personally, I get a lot of enjoyment out of being able to kind of adapt and have the freedom to create.
No, well, it's good that you hit on that. And this is actually, I talk with a lot of people that I coach, and I've had to go through this process myself too, of like learning, what do I want? Like it's hard to get clear on that. Like as a human, like what do I actually want?
Super hard.
Because there's so many influences we have, like our friends, our family, the school we went to,
or your own brain,
church,
ideas,
your own
right?
brain, like society, like all this stuff that pushes you a direction. And a lot of times we don't ask ourselves, like, what do I want?
Yeah.
And for me, I had to do that a few times where I'm like, am I an entrepreneur? Am I an employee? And you asked, I'm like, well, I'm kind of both. But what's important to me is autonomy. Like if I'm ever working somewhere where it's like, I feel like I have no control over what I create, then like I won't be there for long. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, when people have jobs, that's a lot of times where that frustration comes from, where it's like, dude, I'm not in control. I have to show up at a certain time. I have to clock in, clock out. They tell me exactly what to do. And some people may like that, and that's okay, because it's like, I don't have to think about anything. I just do it. But for a lot of people, I think a very human desire is to create. And that's really when your life changes, is when you realize, like, I can create anything. Mm-hmm. Like, so what is it? And when we can answer that, where it's like, I really care about creating this kind of thing, or I really care about connecting with people in this kind of way, it's super powerful, because then the world opens up a little bit, where you realize, like, now I can better decipher, like, what kind of opportunities are for me and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I love working with people on that and helping them think about that. And it's like, let's get really clear on what you want to create, because until we know, we can't build a strategy to get there.
Right.
And so really it's designing your life in a way where you can create. And I've tried to do that myself, where, even though I'm not the founder of Pura, I'm fortunate to work on a meaningful problem right now with great people that I really love. And I've got a lot of flexibility to still pursue like triathlon and coaching and these other things that are meaningful to me. And so life's good.
Yeah, it's certainly. I think a lot of times we glorify entrepreneurship and the freedom. It's actually kind of crappy most of the time. And it's a very difficult thing. Yeah. There are some euphoric moments about it that are really great. But look at, Nate Walkingshaw, for example, who, you knew really well, and who's an entrepreneur currently. At a young age, he created a product and sold it for a ton of money. I think he was an EMT before and ended up doing this very impactful thing and made more money than he would ever need in his lifetime. And then he took a job. Yeah. Right. So there are it's not so black and white, right? Like there are certainly ways that we can find meaningful moments and projects and things and events in our life, for sure. Well,
and the other thing I tell people too is like, if they're stuck in a place that they don't want to be and they want to create, they want to be an entrepreneur, then they should do it. And like, I mean, again, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur, I think we all feel fear of like, well, what if it fails, or what if I fall on my face, or what, and, anyways, there's a lot of things we could go into about fear, but yeah, it's just like, you will certainly fail if you don't show up and try.
Definitely.
So like, if you don't give it a shot, then you've already failed. And like, if you, like, so many entrepreneurs find this out, but like, as soon as you start working on it, it's amazing how the universe starts to align to kind of make things happen. Yeah. Where people are like, oh, I didn't know you're working on that. Like my friend does that too. And let me connect you with them. And so it really is about having kind of just the courage to start. Again, whatever it is, because as soon as you start, then like people now know you're working on something, and
Yeah.
I mean, things, you'll be surprised at how quickly like you can gain momentum.
For sure.
Yeah.
Where, if anyone has a question for you or wants to get to know you a little bit better, where can they connect with you?
So, I mean, online, like LinkedIn's a great spot, Instagram, Twitter. So most of my social handles are just at Ken Frei, Frei. And yeah, like reach out. Would love to connect with people and to see how I can help or add some value.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. It's cool to hear your story.
Thanks for having me.
All right, cool. Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.